like it is work related. If you are employed, you are told you must come to work at 7 o'clock. How will they know whether you are performing that instruction or not? Will you know? Yes, if you come late, they will notice. If you always come early, they will notice. So what it will do, if you always come late, there will be wastage because there will be a lot of time wasted in which you are not doing your work. But if you always come early, there will be no wastage. If your productivity is to make 12 bags in a day, if you come late, you may only make 9, 8, 7. There is wastage, isn't it? You'll be paid for not working according to instructions. So it reduces wastage. Also, continuous production. Continuous meaning if people will always come to work, there will be continuous production. If they don't come, because they are on strike, there is unrest, they are sick or whatever, there will be no continuous production. Productivity, I think I mentioned it last time, isn't it? You know now the difference between productivity and production. You remember the 60 bags versus the 5 and 2 employees? Yeah? Keep it in mind. And then uninterrupted production, meaning continuous production. So when you see industrial relations, for it to operate effectively, it is guided by some of the instruments which are put in place by government, which we call labor laws. Right? So we'll see what we mean by labor laws. First and foremost, we'll try to find out what they are. What they are, labor law or labor laws. I like to call them plural because there is not one. But if you want to call it labor law, you'll find that each one of those laws, you call them codes of conduct and behavior. So labor laws, let's find out what it is. The laws are a variety of body of laws applied to such matters as employment. Employment, you know, is a contract. You get a contract with your employer to say, we have employed you on such and such terms. You'll be paid so much per month, you must work Monday to Friday, and so on and so forth. It's a contract. And also remuneration. Remuneration, welcome my friend. Remuneration, I think I explained what remuneration is last time. Can you remember? Remuneration. You remember, isn't it? What is it? Sir? Benefits. Okay, remuneration. He says benefits. Yes, they are part of remuneration. In simple terms, salaries, wages, allowances, housing allowance, transport allowance, all those are remuneration. They remunerate you to perform the job that you are employed. Then the actual conditions at work. You know, there are some conditions which are just for the well-being of the employee, but there are also conditions at work. I'll give an example. If you work in a condition where the atmosphere is dusty, the laws have prescribed what needs to be done so that those people should work in a conducive environment. And also trade unions, according to the International Labour Organization, employees have the freedom of association. Unions. We are going to talk about this more in depth. The actual industrial relations which we have been talking about. So the labor laws will try to put in place measures for effective and efficient conduct of employees so that there is orderly conduct and behavior. So you are employed so that you cannot just do what you like, but you are controlled by the labor laws. In other words, other people think of labor laws as comprehensive in the sense that they include social security. You know what social security is? Social security. Social security. Okay, I'll give an example. Do you know harassment? You know. You are protected, isn't it? That is part of social security. If we are here, you can't just have some giant guy and harassing us or bullying us and so on. No, no, no. In a work situation, people are supposed to behave in a certain manner. So there is social security. Social security can also be in form of one, they prescribe something that if you work for 20 years, you get your pension. Is that not social security? They deduct 5% from you. The company deducts 10%, puts it in an insurance, so that when you have retired, you should be receiving a little to keep you going. It's part of social security. They will also have something like medical scheme. You know medical scheme? Medical scheme, MAZIM or whatever. Where they don't have, they will give you money to go to a private doctor for you and your family to be treated. That is part of social security. Disability insurance. You'll see as we go to the list of laws, some of the laws in labor will actually prescribe what needs to be done if someone is injured while at work and how that person should be compensated. So disability at work. Some jobs are naturally hazardous. You know what I mean by hazardous? They are dangerous. Either you work in an environment where stones are thrown left and right and so on, you must be protected, isn't it? That's why they give you protective clothing. You remember I said people who are doing welding, they have to wear what? Goggles. Those black goggles to protect them from the danger of ultraviolet rays, which are emitted from those processes. If you look at those without covering, within even a week, you'll be blind. Did you know that? So never look where they are welding, don't look at them directly. You lose your eyes. So, disability insurance as well. So, unlike the laws of contract, tort, or property, the elements of labor law are somewhat less homogeneous than the rules governing the particular legal relationship. That statement is a little bit, I would call it mouthful, is it? But we can break it up so that you can understand. What it means by homogeneous, it means that the laws are widespread. They are not all compressed in one place and doing one thing. They are widespread, homogeneous. They are not homogeneous. Homogeneous meaning just compressed and becoming one unit, but heterogeneous meaning they are widespread. So unlike if you look at the law of contract, it will only be talking about contracts. You understand? Tort, it will only talk about tort. If you talk of property, we are going to discuss all these at some point. Property law will only talk about properties. But labor laws borrow from there. We are going to see as we go along. So for you or others, when they are employees, when they are involved in individual contractual relationships, they grow out of the traditional employment situation. When you start having contractual relationships, you know contractual relationships? A relationship between the employer and the employee. Every one of them has what we call a relationship. The employee and the employer. The employer becomes an entity, maybe represented by the manager or whoever it is. The employee as an individual. So that contractual relationship comes out of an employment situation where you are employed. That's why we talk of employer and employee. It's a contractual relationship. Labor laws also deal with statutory requirements for collective and corrective relationships. When they say statutory requirements, meaning government has put up laws, which are labor laws, to ensure that organizations should have certain things in place to make things work in an orderly manner. And I will give an example. One statutory requirement is one, the organization must have a board of directors. Board of directors. Let me write them down so that you can see. Employer. Yeah. We'll have one board of directors. Usually they are about 7. 2, managing director. 3, directors. 4, managers. 5, professionals. 6, technicians. 7, artisans. These can be skilled or semi-skilled. Then you have laborers. Do you see that line? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What happens is that government in its laws, company law, when you talk of company law, they will prescribe that every organization should have a structure either like this or very similar to this. They actually approve. When a company is formulated, they apply to government to say, what are the statutory requirements that you want us to do? Then they will tell you, one, you must have what you call constitution or articles of association. So in that constitution and articles, you will also dictate how these must be there. And each one of these is the role of each one of those is explained. So that's how you come to statutory requirements. Then when we come to collective relationships that are increasingly important in mass production societies is when we talk of trade unions. So this is the employer, right? The employer is given this to happen. But to make sure that the relationship works well, you have here associations or trade unions. Now, the two, in principle, they just mean the same. The associations and trade unions, in principle, they are the same. But other people wanted to distinguish themselves to say we can't be trade union, we want to be an association. So you have an association of all employers. They associate themselves, come together and form an organization like ECAM. I talked about ECAM at some point. You remember? Employers Consultative Association of Malawi. And then that is the employers. But the workers, you will find that, have you ever heard of professional associations? Huh? Okay, I'll give you an example. All the doctors have their group as doctors. We call it a house union in principle, an association of doctors. And here there's Medical Association of Malawi. Have you ever heard of that? What about the nurses? All the nurses, according to the profession. Have you not ever heard of the nurses? They say the Nurses and Midwives Organization of Malawi. Freedom of association. They must come together as a union. Sometimes in other places you have even some technicians in certain fields, they will come together to form associations. You see when we come to talk about trade unions, why this is important. And then the lower ranks, most of the people who form what we call the common trade unions are these here. From this up to, from this one up to here, they form trade unions. They all come together like the Teachers Union of Malawi, the Malawi Congress of Trade Unions, we have the ESCOM Union, we have the Malawi Housing Corporation Union. All those come together. Reason being, they want to have collective relationship with the employer. These normally up here represent the employer, the managers, the directors, managing director, and the board. They represent the employer. These represent the workers. Are we together? We are, isn't it? Now, if we have these two, we have them increasingly becoming important in mass production societies. Why do we talk about that? Is that wherever there is mass production, the most important resource for that production will be who? You know the resources that we have. I mentioned the type of resources we have. There is what? Resources in an organization. What resources do we have in an organization? Come on, gentlemen. Okay. Funds, isn't it? Is money also a resource? Money. Funds. Secondly, people, staff, human resource. What about the thirdly? What is the third resource? Three, if we have funds, we have people, these are inputs into the organization. What is the other next resource we think? Technology, isn't it? Is that not so? 4, materials and supplies. 5, we have time. Do you think time is a resource? If you miss it, you have missed it forever. You will never come back to it. Every minute that ticks, if you don't make good use of it, it's gone. So it's a resource. When you have it, make good use of it. So, collective relationships work well where there is organized statutory requirements made for the organization, and therefore, in mass production, these inputs become very important. 1, finances. 2, people. 3, technology. 4, materials. 5, time. In order to produce. Do we agree? Do you agree with me? Right? You agree with me, isn't it? Okay. Sorry. So finally, the legal relationship between organized economic interests and the state and the various rights and obligations related to some types of social services are also part and parcel of the relationship that will be guided by labor laws. Do you think there is a legal relationship between the workers and the organization? What do you think? There is, isn't it? What is the relationship? It's boss and employee, isn't it? The relationship between the manager and the worker. It's a legal relationship. It is formulated from the laws. Right? I hope you are understanding as we go along, because I don't want you to get lost, because later on when we get into deeper discussions, you should easily understand what I'm talking about. That's why I go to the extent of explaining some of the inside things of what the statements say. For instance, when we say resources that are required by the organization. One, in fact, a lot of people first put people as number one resource. Two, finances. Three, technology. Four, materials and supplies. Five, time. These are very important resources. So let's see the spectrum of laws that we have. You remember I said these laws are not homogeneous. They actually emanate from a number of laws which were formulated for specific purposes. So there is what we call the Industrial Relations Law Act in Malawi. This one regulates how employers and employees will interact to improve terms and conditions of service, hours of work, when you get sick, what should the organization do? When you die, what should the organization do? When you get employed, what should the organization do? That's the Industrial Relations Act. It's quite big. Other people call it Labor Relations Act. The other one is the Employment Act. In this act, the majority of what it tries to control and make sure is understood is the contractual relationship between the employer and the employee. That's where it talks about when you are dismissed, what should happen? When you are aggrieved, you are not happy with what is happening, what should happen? How are you going to be treated in the event that you have the employer not dealing with you properly? What happens when you don't get your pay, your wages? So that is the Employment Act. And then you have the Workers' Compensation Act. You remember I talked about Social Security? When you are employed, but under a lot of circumstances. Some of the circumstances are such that you are exposed to injury. Assuming you are injured while at work, the law, Workmen's Compensation Act, dictates that within 14 days from the accident, the employer must report the matter to the Ministry of Labor. If you didn't know, you should know now. If you are working, you get injured. In fact, the best you can do is the matter to be reported immediately, right? Once reported, the ministry ensures that it provides instruments or forms for you to take to the hospital. One, to be treated. Two, to make sure that if you are treated, at the end of the treatment, are you fully recovered or have you sustained some disabilities? You see the process? First, you are injured while at work. When you are injured, it must be reported to the Ministry of Labor. Once it is reported to the Ministry of Labor, the ministry issues instructions through a form to say this man must go to the hospital, get treated up to the end until he recovers. I'll give you personal experience. This one, although it is not related to that, but it is similar. I was driving in what do they call this place? 36 huko kumusi huko. Tumiseu toipa. You drive pangono, it's a lot of potholes and so on. Is that not so? There was a woman with a little girl walking by the side. As I was coming, do you know what the little girl did? Anafuata muka manjama mai wake ndikutamangira munsewu kuzagunda kumbali kwa gali moto yanga. Mwamvesa? Because of that impact, she fell down and broke her leg. Very pathetic, eh? I think that kid is about what? 5 years or 4 years or something. 5 years. So I stopped, took her. First, I rushed and I found a place where there were policemen. I reported to the police. I said, as far as I'm concerned, because this child cannot tell, you know, it's a child. If he's an elderly person, you would rush to the actual police station to report the case because he will say, nikupeza bwino or papwete kada. But a child cannot say, isn't it? Amangoli, right? Can you tell where she or he is injured? Maybe it is serious or not. My daughter is a doctor, so I rushed to the hospital so that they can attend to her. They found that she had a fracture. Mukuvesa? After that, then I went to the police and so on and so forth. They took my driving license. They gave me paper joined. Okay. But the important thing here is that these laws are meant to make sure there's orderly arrangement for social security. Here to secure like in form of the child. So now I have been, it's now almost 2 months, 1.5 months. I've been taking this child to the hospital. Now she's walking. They gave her, what do you call? POP, plaster of Paris. Then they went, checked her. They found she's healing. They removed that, put another one. I will go again next week. After that, then in September, when she recovers, the doctor should tell us whether she is completely healed. If she is completely healed, they'll give me back my driving license. But if she is disabled, you understand, be disabled, wapunduka, the matter will be taken to court and I will be charged. But who is going to pay for that disability? Me? Who is going to pay? Me? Are you sure? You are scaring me. What do you think? What do you think? Who is going to pay? I'm not scared. You know that I pay insurance for my car. What's the use of that insurance? Yes, insurance, car insurance. No, whichever. The insurance inside there are components. Third party, it means you can get damages for the one who is what? Who is injured, who is not yourself. But comprehensive, even yourself, if you are injured in your car, you should also be compensated. But if it is third party, you only compensate who? Mukumvesa? If my car was damaged, broken, they would take it to the garage and fix it. If a child is disabled, the money will come from insurance to give to her. Kamkumvesa pamene? So you can see how the law operates. The labor law does the same if you are injured while at work. So then we have Factories Act. In the factory, how many of you have been to factories? You know, mango na easy, sugar, chan. You don't know what is happening, isn't it? Mango pesa ziri mstoro. No, you should be visiting factories so that you can see what's happening. A factory like sugar, making sugar. First, amakadura mizimbe amakazi ika mumpika kuzigaya zimpika za zikuru akazigaya azifinye achoseko juice uja akampike nikumianika kuti akhale ngati sugar. After that amgawe wina wa brown wina wa yera mukumva. There's production. When you have that, it's a factory arrangement. Some of the processes are very dangerous. Mukumva. So the Factories Act makes sure that those dangerous processes must have in place measures to protect the people who operate them. Inu mgenza magari moto awapangidwa bwanji akatenga miala kupanga malata kuwapinda kuti zikhale magari moto. Kuli ntchito ntchito yaikulu. So some of those processes are very hazardous. That's what they call it. Very hazardous. So people must be protected. So the Factories Act is also part of the labor laws. The other one is occupational health and safety. For occupational health and safety, the simplest I can say is that some of the processes in the factory produce fumes. Fumes, you know fumes? Gases. Some gases are very bad. Others are even dangerous. You can contract disease because of those gases. So, occupational health and safety will actually dictate to the organization which is dealing with some hazardous gases what they need to do to make sure that the workers who work there are protected. Have you ever heard of nuclear explosions? Nuclear? You have heard about them. In terms of processes which are extremely hazardous, they even put chisaini chache chimakhala choncho amati choncho. I don't know whether I can manage to do it. It's like this, this radiation. You don't even see the emission of the radiation. You don't see it. Like chapulika huko kuma mpepo yatenga radiation ija tosi pana. If we are affected by that radiation, we will die slowly. Do you know how you die? That radiation kills the cells. So the cells for the eyes, the cells for the ears, the cells for the skin, you die. The systems just collapse. That's why nuclear war is they are trying to avoid it. So occupational health and safety will make sure that those hazardous emissions and the production processes are not allowed to make the people work in danger. they put protection for them. In fact, in some instances, they don't even allow human beings to approach such places. They use remote control to touch those things, to deal with those things. The last is mines and minerals. The most common that we are aware of here in Malawi is quarry. You know quarrying? You know what happens when the quarry machines are breaking the stones and so on. It's a dangerous operation. I talked about open pit. You heard of open pit? Some of the operations in some coal mines, they just dig a big pit, maybe as big as a stadium. Mango kakumba, kuchosa coal from there to be used for firing boilers and that kind of thing. Open pits. Those open pits can be very dangerous because see akumba, sometimes because of the rain, zima kwirira kufa, or they get injured. So the laws will put in place mechanisms to make sure that the workers who handle those things are protected. So these are just the 6 most common among the tinachita kubwerekera room hii. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So now that we have that list, you will see that if you go maybe to the library or something, when you go look up those, they will be constituting what is a compendium of labor laws, which you will be expected at least periodically to be aware of. As I was saying earlier on, I said, when you look at the labor laws, they are not homogeneous. They are heterogeneous. They are taking cue from the numerous other laws which are dealing with labor. Some of them which are not there, but which need to be considered include the company law, the law of contract, because it also emanates from the Employment Act. Up to here, let's see in summary. In summary, when we are looking at the 2, industrial relations as we started from the beginning and labor laws, we will see that these 2 involve 1, negotiations between representatives of employees, employers, such as ECAM, and also employees such as the trade unions. These negotiations are there to determine employment conditions like wages, working hours, benefits and workplace policies. When we talk of workplace policies, it's the same like when you say, if you're employed, you must come to work at 7 o'clock, knock off at 5 o'clock. Those are workplace policies. Again, the scope of industrial relations covers all the processes and outcomes of collective bargaining. When we are doing collective bargaining, maybe I'll give an example. There is always results of the collective bargaining must be recorded and made known to everybody, the employer and the employee. Once an agreement has been made, they must be followed. And the labor laws allow that what has been agreed, so long as it is not ultra vires meaning not allowed in law, it must be followed. And then in collective bargaining, working people through their trade unions negotiate contracts with their employers to determine the terms of employment, which cover pay, benefits, hours of work, leave, job health and safety, ways of balancing work and family, and more. You see, some of those may come in like terms and conditions of work. You know that if you are working, you are allowed to go on leave. You can't work continuously for good. If you allow your worker to work continuously without leave, it's also in contravention of the labor laws. I'll give examples. A watchman is allowed to work up to 72 hours. After that, at least give him between 12 and 24 hours rest. Koma yenao, amangoti mmene anayambira kugwira ntchito palibe siku limene samampasa off. Mukumva? It is wrong. So, the law makes you make schedules in such a way that at certain time of the work schedule, the watchman should rest, and during that time find someone who is replacing his work. And then for workers, you'll find that if you work for 6 months and more, you are entitled to 1 week's leave or 2 weeks leave. If you have worked for over 1 year, you are entitled maybe to 2 weeks leave. If it is 3 years, maybe 1 month's leave. When you are actually on leave, but you still receive your pay. Is that not so? Those are some of the provisions in the law. Sometimes they even tell you to say, each time you are working, you are earning your money. As you are working also, if you complete a certain period, you earn your leave. You earn it. So if you work for 1 year and you are not given leave, you can tell the organization to say, no, I want to go on leave. I've earned it. And that leave, during the days of your leave, the company must pay your salary. So those are some of the conditions that you actually meet. Any questions before we move? Any questions before we move? Silence means two things. What does it mean? Everything is clear. Or siti namva ekintu kyose. Mwamba Okay. Before we move to trade unions, I will just as a matter of what do you call to make you gain something else as well. We have been now talking about collective agreements, and we have also been talking about two groups negotiating, the employer and the employee. Is that not so? Let's see an example of a collective agreement from negotiations. Normally in negotiations, let's choose. We want to negotiate on wages, isn't it? Wages. Negotiation, if I have to make it very simple, we always come across it. For instance, when you go to the shop of an Indian, ukaona chintu, umanena uta saru ndaikonda. Umafunsa kuti kodi mtengo wache ndi chani? Si chocho. Akanena kuti 1,000. Do you accept it straight away? Why don't you? Why don't you accept kuti amwenye mwetu 1,000 ndio mweyo basi? Why? That mwenye, his aim is to make profit, isn't it? The more profit, the better for him. So he will usually tell you a price which is higher to hear what you have in the pocket. So what will you say if he says this saru is 1,000 kwacha? What will you tell the mwenye? How much? 800. Hey, you are a very nice lady. I think you will be buying from me. Let's see, we have here employer, okay, and here employee. My own, Normally, the employer will give what we call an offer. Maybe for sake of argument, instead of 1,000, let's say it is 10,000. Or what would be an offer? 10,000? Okay, let's put 10,000. And you, as an employer says, I will employ you, I will give you wages 10,000. But you say, no. How do I put it? Okay. The highest that you can offer, let's say it is 8,000. What she said, 8. That's the highest that you said you have, But you be prepared to negotiate with him at, say, 6,000. And yet, the highest that he wants, the employer, is 10,000. But given the opportunity that there is no other person that he can employ, he is prepared to hire you at, let's say, 7,000. So we have what we call, this one is your bottom line. Yeah? And this one, this is bottom line. This is the offer. This is what you are prepared to pay. I mean to receive. Mukumvesa hapo? Now, usually, will the employer disclose this? Will he say, we want to employ you at 10,000, but if you are not in agreement, we are prepared to employ you at 7,000. Will he disclose that? Never. Never. Or is it the other way around? He will, I shouldn't confuse you. Normally, it's the other way. Let's put this is the employer. Kamkumva, this is the employee. Because here it's not the Indian. Here is the employer, this is the employee. Mukumvesa? The employee is prepared to be employed at 10,000. But if these people refuse, I'm ready to accept the job at 9,000, at 7,000. Mwamvesa? Meanwhile, the employer, to him, he will disclose that, no, this job we are prepared to pay only 6,000 for this job. But you are saying, no, 6,000 is too small. So do you think you will disclose to say, what I want you to employ me, I want you to employ me at 6,000, but if you give me 8,000, I'll be happy. Will you say that? No? So one of these is disclosed. Now what is important here is that if this and this overlap, overlap, there is a possibility of coming to agreement. Don't you think so? Just like the case of an employee, an Indian shop. If what you are prepared to accept and what is being offered, like what is being offered here and what he is accepting, they overlap. If these two overlap, there is a possibility of you coming to an agreement. The best way I can put it, if the Indian is prepared, is saying that the cloth is 10,000, Mwamva, you have in your pocket 6,000, but if he is prepared that you have in your pocket 6,000, the Indian is saying it is 7,000. But if he reduces to 8,000, you'll be prepared to get it. While he says, if this man has only got 7,000, I'm prepared to get it. It means there's some kind of overlap. Can you see that overlap? As you go bargaining, you find that somewhere here, as he is going down and as you are going up, somewhere here you reach what we call an agreement somewhere here because there is an overlap. But if the Indian says, saru imene the 10,000, ngati ulibe 9,000, basi pitani. Mukumva? Alibe